The Grand Hyatt Hotel's lobby was filled with other contestants, including their parents, siblings, and other contestants who reached the finals of the 92nd edition of the Scripps National Spelling Bee, to watch the competition. It was so quiet despite being a little crowded with people present. The sound of a needle falling can also be heard. 24 rounds were being played between the two individuals who reached the final. 13-year-old Nancy was in her seat to spell her word. The previous lady had been crowned the world's best speller in this hall since last year. Children under the age of 15 who have won local spelling bee contests in various states of the United States, as well as in many countries around the world, are competing to win this final round. That's what happened today. Were also present on the stage. And quot, sassafras and quot. Nancy hears the pruner's word with a halting breath. He asked Prononza to repeat the word, phrase. Repeated the word himself. It was one of the championship words, but he could not immediately remember it. However, he did not find it too difficult from the sound of it, and if it was not so difficult to hear, then he meant it. It could have been a Turkish word. The 9-year-old second finalist was sitting in her chair, holding her number card around her neck, trying to spell the word with her finger. He unconsciously spent time doing this, which came from the competition. The regular time of the fancy was over. S__S_S. He began to spell out the word. He paused for a moment after making the first 4 letters. Then he began repeating the remaining 5 letters. A_F_R. She paused once more. The other finalists sat down and repeated the last 2 words. U_S. Nancy opened in front of Mike, saying these 2 words at the exact same time and then hearing the bell ring for sure, which rang for misspellings. The shock wasn't the only thing on her face. Yes, this is another finalist's face also, the correct spelling of the pronouncer ab. This word, the sassafras, was repeated. Fancy closed her eyes involuntarily. And quot. There should be an A before the last letter. What did I say, you thinking? And quot. He scolded himself. Fancy Graham, with an almost matching complexion, started walking toward the contestant's desk. The hall echoed with applause, revealing the possible runners-up. Dejana Wali Dadu Hussein was the second finalist. In 9 years. Walla also gave her a big round of applause. As Nancy approached, she reached forward and shook hands with her. Nancy responded with a soft smile and took her seat. The people in Lee Hall took their seats again. And the other finalist was standing in front of Mike. Nancy had seen him. It was a wishful hope that even if a Gru was wrong on his word, he would come back once again in his final round. And quot. That was a catch-22 and quot. This is what he said while shaking hands. She couldn't guess, he was saying it or he was really understanding the word catch-22. It happens when he wants. Who wants on the center stage? He was the new finalist. With his same mischievous smile and dark black glittering eyes, he looked down at the chief performer from the stage. Nathan smiled back, and it wasn't just Jonathan, it was on everyone's lips. The 9-year-old finalist lost. The audience watching the championship. Her face had an innocent look. Sparkling, almost round eyes that were lively and animated like a cartoon character, and almost pink lips that only spoke from time to time. He remained, and the little thing that came upon him was very much said to him. Balori was forcing a smile. They were and quot. innocent temptations, and quote, only her parents knew, with their daughter in the first row on the left side of the stage with the parents of another child. The seats were reserved for the other finalists. Unlike his parents, he was extremely calm. There was still no tension on his face as his son played for the championship. If there was tension on anyone's face, it was on his 7-year-old daughter's face. She was light during the competition, and now she was looking at her 9-year-old brother, who was preparing for the speaker's speech, with glasses on her eyes. Capelletti Jonathan said. A sudden smile appeared on the finalist's face as he barely controlled his eyes, first clockwise then anti-clockwise. There was some commotion in the hall. After hearing his every word in the ship, she reacted in the same way. She smiled and twinkled her eyes. Kamal was confident in herself. The onlookers applauded her. The verbs in the section were more difficult than the second row. It was a difficult time for him, but with a smile on his face, he went on every step and played in front of the last stick. Definition please. He started using his regular time. Language of origin. He asked the next question after the pronouncer's answer. The Italian repeated the pronouncer's question and moved his lips left and right in a thoughtful manner. He lived in Jephthah. His parents were still at peace. His expressions were telling that the word was easy for him. All previous words were used with please use this word in a sentence. He was speaking from the announcer. After listening to the announcer, write the word on the back of the number hanging around the neck. I thought now your time is up. You will be notified of the beginning of the last 30 seconds in which you have to spell your word. Your eyes will be closed. Capelletti he repeated the word once more. C-A-P-P-E-L-L. He paused for a single word to spell. Then, taking a breath, he began to spell again. E-T-T-I. The hall echoed and echoed for a long time. The new spelling bee champion was just one word away. After the clapping stopped, Jonathan realized that he had to spell one more word. He shook his head. Come back. Vice nicked wo the word was pronounced for him. For a moment the smile on his face disappeared. Then his mouth opened and his eyes widened. And Maigara had the power to come out of his mouth. He was in scat and for the first time in this championship, his eyes were on him and he himself was frozen like that. Nancy sat upright in her chair helplessly. There was a word that could have brought her back to the championship again. His parents were shocked by his reaction for the first time. Their son was hiding his face from the audience with his number car. They could see it on the screen. 100 of me actually felt a lot of sympathy for this kid, and there were very few who didn't want to see him win. There was only one person sitting in the hall, calm and at peace. It was difficult to tell whether she was calm or excited, and she was the 7-year-old sister of this child, who was a daughter between her mother and father. First impression, she smiled and leaned against the back of the chair with great satisfaction. She kept her hands in her lap and very slowly she started clapping. His mother clapped his hands for a while. He looked at the hand and his smiling face in a bewildered way. Then, on the stage, he hid his face behind the number car, shaking his confused son with his finger. I was busy writing and growing up. Asterisk 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 asterisk. The first chapter of this book was different from the next 9 chapters. Anyone reading it could not have felt the difference. The first chapter and the next 9 chapters were not written by the same person. They were written by one person. Neither was she knew that it was the first bad faith in her life, but she did not know that it would be the last. The first chapter of this book could not be read by anyone else but her. She changed the first chapter. With wet eyes, he gave the print command. The printer began to churn out 50 pages at lightning speed, which was the revised first edition of the book. He picked up the mask lying on the table and looked at it in a very depressed manner. Then he folded it into 2 parts. After that, they in the toast dr. He picked up the cover of the mask and wrote a few words on it under his lip. By then the printer was done. He took the pages out of the tray. Carefully placing them in a file, he placed them with the other file covers. There were 9 chapters remaining in this book. Taking a deep breath, she opened it and took one last look at the dim screen of the laptop. Before the screen went dark, a text appeared on it. Will be waiting. There was a glimmer of moisture in his eyes. The screen went dark. He turned and took a look around the room. Then he walked over to the bed. Had to eat. Sitting on the bed for a few moments, he looked at the Chizo lying on the bedside table. He did not know when his wrist watch went off. Maybe at night when he was there. She went to sleep. Then maybe he didn't remember. She picked up the wristwatch and started looking at him. The second hand was moving fast. The second hand never stops. Only minutes and hours seem to stop. The journey ends. The journey begins. She kept touching him as she kept touching him. She was not touched. She was the only one in the house, until the time was exactly right. Not just to the minute, to the second. Perfection was not in the wheel. It was in the person who held it. She wipes the moisture from her eyes and puts the doll back on the side table. Pulling the blanket over her, she lies down on the bed. Don't do it. Wait for it. Sometimes the wait is too long and sometimes the wait is too short and Sleep began to fall in her eyes. She was thinking of him and as usual. She was whispering to him while reciting the verse of the chair. When she remembered him. Or do you want to throw a chair over yourself? Requests. Picking up a large photo frame on the bedside table. He gently touched it, then wiped the unsightly circle on the frame's glass with his elbow. Until he saw a face in the frame. After watching, he placed it back on the side table. Like everything else I started to remember yesterday. As his existence started to become sand again. Moisture started to come in my eyes once again. He closed his eyes. And today and it was too late. And in executives and After saying that, she got up and went towards the bar. Jackie followed her gaze. She was talking to the bartender at the bar counter. Her white beauty was reflected in her black, backless dress. She looked up to the edge of the moon. He looked away and took a sip of the large orange juice in front of him. After a long time he contemplated a woman's body, and after a long time he was alone in a bar with a woman. That's a hotel barroom. However, he used to come to such a place after a long time. He was taking another sip from the glass he was holding in his hand when he returned with 2 champagne glasses. And I don't drink. And he reminded her while placing a glass in front of her. And this is champagne. And Jackie said to him with a huge smile. While shaking the receiver, his glass was in his hand. And Champagne is not wine, is it? And quat. He said in a joking way as a reply. He took out a cigarette from the cigarette case lying on the table and lit it with the help of a lighter. Jackie, waking up, conveniently took out the cigarette in his pocket. He looked at her. His move was extremely unexpected. Champagne glass in left hand, she was smiling and taking a puff of cigar. She stole another cigarette from the cigarette case. And quat. Come on. And quat. She was surprised by Jackie's offer to check the bar. She was watching a few guys dancing on the dance floor. There weren't many people in the barroom at that time, and only a few of them were on the dance floor. That's what they really wanted to do. They were in the nightclub of the same hotel. And quat. I don't think so. And quat. He took a cigarette butt and put a lighter on it. And quat. Hasn't he come? And quat. What a laugh. And quat. I don't like it. She smiled. She was looking at him with a strange smile in her eyes as she took a sip of champagne. It was dark. And quat. Don't you ever drink wine? And quat? He asked, leaning forward while placing the glass in his hand on the table. The man's gaze lifted from the glass for a moment, then he looked at Jackie. And quat. A long time ago, as he admitted. And quat. Champagne, Jackie said with artificial surprise. And quat. Also. With an impassive face, he said, looking at Anne's floor. He raised the glass again and looked at the face of the man sitting in front of him, the most attractive man he had ever met. I put him in the list of men. He was definitely at the top. It wasn't her physical features that kept her in this position. In her life there were more handsome men than her in terms of appearance. After all, the gambling was very good. His limitless men, his voice, his clear mind and innocent deep eyes, his smile, or his confidence and enthusiasm. And it was not his fault. I could tell from the claim that the man could have attracted any woman. His character profile read that he was not a womanizer. I wondered why he didn't want to be on, he thought, and at that very moment the person looked up from the dance floor and looked at him. Jackie's smile was involuntary. He was also smiling aimlessly. He was very long. After enjoying the company of a woman that she was very beautiful, and he was worried. Otherwise he would never have spent 2 hours with a foreign woman. And quat. Tamahiri. Champagne. And quat. Jackie reminded him once more. And quat. You can take. He raised his glass towards her in response. And quat. If he used to drink, what is wrong with him now? And quat. And quat. That which has been considered this time. And quat. For the fun of the father, the fun is over. He laughed uncontrollably at that. He was looking at her. And quat. You know, I'm feeling the Saharan attraction in you. And quat. He said as he placed both hands on the table and looked into her eyes. He smiled. And quat. It's my pleasure. And quat. He replied. Jackie placed his hand on the table. In an imperceptible manner. On the back of the hand English was moving in an apparently imperceptible way. He put the cigarette in the ashtray he held in his left hand. O was watching silently. Then Jackie said. And quat. Do you believe in one-night stands? And quat. The answer was immediate. And quat. Yes, of course. And quat. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Greens were blooming in their own water in an old earthen pot, which was placed on the stove made of bamboo. A Sabohi woman used the leaves of dry grass picked from the bank of the canal. Then he started blowing into the stove. There was an attempt to keep the look cool. He sat down on the warm floor covered with mud, close to the stove. Try to reach as high as the floor. At this age, Lakdiu was sitting on Panju's bed and was cooking leeches in the stove. The sound of Lakdiu's scolding was heard in the room. See steam and boiling in it. And what does the man do to you? And he was surprised and exaggerated at this sudden question of Amami. What he said as he tried to remember. And works and what do you do? And Mom asked again. And working out and he looked at Sa and grew up. And in a foreign country? And the old woman asked in response. She also sat on the ground like him. And she wrapped her arm around his knee. And yes, he is in a foreign country. And looking at Sarg. In the same way, Hoya said. And so, who has it here? And no and then, and I don't have anyone, and he answered with a yawn looking at Sag. And did the man leave the house? And he looked at the woman in shock. And no and then what did you do? And no and he then shook his head. And then who did you come here for? And for comfort, and he said casually. And don't calm down. And he started seeing the face of this woman. And what is not in the world, what to look for in the world. And he looked at this woman with surprise. It was a deep story, and after listening to the woman's mouth, it became deeper. And then why stay in this world if you live without peace? And she didn't want to ask him the question she asked. And then where are you? The woman stopped for a moment and asked. She looked at the green again, wondering. And don't the men say to come back? And he said first. He didn't say. And he himself began to make small pieces of wood and put them in the fire. And alone, and he paused for a moment. And yes, and she answered this time in a soft voice. She was a widowed woman who was sitting in a plastic shop in an airy dish. And so you will see it alone? And lying in the sun, taking out a glass of water from a horse. Amami did as she regretted. She kept throwing the wood into the fire aimlessly. And didn't you love me? And she was silent for a moment. And I used to. And his voice was extremely soft. And didn't you care? And the moisture of the steam rising from the green began to fall into his eyes. After a long time, he did not know what he remembered. And Rakta and the voice became even fainter. Amami was sitting next to him and there was dough for 2 breads in the plate. And didn't you give me bread? And he rubbed his eyes with the sheet. And Dita Taha. And she could barely hear her own voice. And you still gave it to him. And you also made a deal against Allah with him. You will be far away from him by taking everything. Unquote. Unquote. Amami laughed as she kneaded the dough. She couldn't even speak. There is no space to speak. She just kept looking at Amami without batting an eyelid. Unquote. If you don't marry me, will you bring another woman? Unquote. 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 No. Unquote. This time, Amami saw his face while kneading the dough. Unquote. You don't love him? Unquote. His left asked Jesse Armour one more question. Unquote. Have you ever loved? Unquote. My eyes flooded. I remembered a little. Continue.